Okay, in this video, we're going to be showing how to get rid of this ribbon cable from your stripped GoPro and replace it with buttons and possibly an LED. These ribbon cables are kind of fragile, and after a while, a couple of buttons stopped working for me. So, let's get a couple disclaimers out of the way. So first, I spent a lot of time on this. It took me a long time. I worked on it every couple days for like a month, just trying to figure out how to get these buttons or the mapping on the pins. And I'm sharing this information for free. I mean, you know, if you want to send a tip on Thingiverse my way or whatever, that's fine. But I'm not asking for it. I mean, I'm just sharing this information. So, all I ask is basically if you're going to use this or pass this on or post this somewhere, just acknowledgement. I don't think that's too much to ask. My channel isn't even monetized, so you know you probably didn't have to watch an ad to see this content or to see these instructions. So since all this information and the hard work that I did, you know, I'm not asking for anything in return. Just you know, acknowledgement and some thanks. And speaking of some acknowledgement or thanks and some credit, I did have trouble with one of the pins. I couldn't figure out where it mapped to, and then I did get some help. And I am not even going to try to say his name because I'm going to butcher it, and I'm just going to put it right here. Okay, and so thank you very much for your help with that. The second disclaimer is this is not easy. So everything you do, you take it upon yourself. If you don't check your work, or check my work even, because I could be wrong, you know, and if you ruin your GoPro, that's on you. So just make sure that you understand this is going to be hard and you may damage something. And I'll be honest, the buttons are not nearly as difficult as the LED, but nonetheless, you stand a chance of ruining something. So do it at your own risk, okay? And with that, let's move forward. Okay, so before you get started, apart from buying parts, and I'll try to list as much as I can in the video description. The LED I bought many years ago, so I can't give you a link for that, although it's probably just like a 2 volt, 2 to 3 volt LED, I believe. My guess is that it's given 1.8 volts. And don't get like a flashing LED. If it has any kind of hertz or whatever cycled flashing to it, then I don't think it's going to work properly, because the flashing is done by the GoPro. So I don't think that combination would work well at all, if at all. So apart from those parts and a soldering iron, some solder with a soldering iron should have a very sharp point. You're also going to need an X-Acto knife if you do the LED. I also use this headset. It's adjustable in just about every way conceivable, and it has a light and lets me see things up close because everything here is so small. And if you don't want to damage or fry your board or see smoke, you need to get a multimeter, and just mostly going to be in continuity mode. So in continuity, you just check pins and see if you've bridged something that you shouldn't have bridged. And I mean, you have to have a multimeter. You know, on the back of a car driver magazine or some other magazine here in the US, you can see a coupon. Sometimes it's for a flashlight, but a lot of times they've got a coupon for a free multimeter. Just go into the store with the coupon, grab a multimeter off the shelf, check out. You just got a free multimeter. And it doesn't have to be super accurate for this stuff, because like I said, we're going to be using continuity. So you don't need to spend $100 or something and get a really nice fluke or something for this anyway. Okay, so that's preparation, and let's get started on the 2 buttons. The record and power buttons, surprisingly, can be soldered just to this. Yeah, get this coffee cup away. Just to this board. So the buttons that I used are from Amazon. It's just some kind of pack. You don't have to get this exact same one. You can use any 2 buttons. I use surface mount buttons, really small ones. I mean, the bigger they are, the more space you're going to have to take, and the bigger your print's going to have to be. The way I did it for this print, my little detachable button module, I needed it pretty small. So the buttons I use, and this is, by the way, if you're worried about this ever falling out, I'll show you that. That's really, I designed, you can't see it here, but there's a little spring clip in there that actually holds this in place. It's actually pretty strong, so I don't think it's ever gonna pop out. So the 2 buttons that I use are from this box, from this variety box, and they're gonna be really small, but it's length 4, width 3 millimeters, depth is 1.5 millimeters, not including the button. And then that's after I bent. There's 2 tabs for the surface mount, and I just bent them down so that they're, you know, flush with these sides, so that I could put these in my little print thing like this. So they're so small. So like I said, you can use any button you want. I'm giving you the dimensions because if you use my design, then that's the one that's going to fit in here. 4 by 3 by 1.5 deep. And then the LED is a little over 4. I want to say it's like 4.1, 4.2 millimeters in diameter. So this hole is 4.2 millimeters in diameter, and that fits the LED pretty good, very snug. I do glue these down after I wire them up. So that's the buttons that I use. You can use anything for your own design. Figure it out. All that is that matters really is how you wire them onto the back of this, and I will go over that right here. So in this diagram, by the way, okay, so before we do that, I'm going to show you different places for ground. There's ground all over this board, mostly here, some up here. Now I noticed that after I figured out, after my 5-volt socket from the USB-C thing came off, I was forced to figure out how to give 5 volts to this board. And you know, I messed around with the battery a little bit, but because I didn't want to carry that extra chip around, I had plenty of these BECs. I found the 5-volt pad, and then I put up a drawing. I put up a picture in the Naked GoPro group, and I was in a hurry and I really wanted to just test it, so I stuck ground right here. And the funny thing is that, so here's the ground pad that I used, right? And this whole thing is ground. So is the outside of this case, so is the outside of the case for the SD card reader, and so is this little hole, anything that where you can see this brass color really is ground. This is probably ground as well, but it's on the back of the camera, so you don't want to use that. Just so happens I put it there. I just found a spot. I said, you know what, I want to test this, so I stuck it on there. Next thing I know, every single picture everybody was posting with a 5-volt BEC, the ground was in almost exactly the same place. And you don't have to do that. Just, you know, there's plenty of ground. You don't have to. I realize that you watch somebody do something with this and you don't want to risk anything, so I do it exactly the same. But I'm just telling you that ground there's plenty of places. And for these 3 buttons, we're going to be using a different spot. You can snake a wire all the way over there if you want, but there's ground right here. There's ground in these holes, as I mentioned. And this little circular pad is ground. So if you look at this diagram, okay, in this diagram, you'll see the 3 spots for ground. And then in this diagram, you'll see the 2 pads for the record wire and the power and mode wire. Now, if you just bridge, like take a wire and bridge the power mode button to one of the grounds, you're doing the same thing as this hack. This is kind of a hack, right? So if your power button stops working, you can cut it. You scrape some of the trace and ground that trace, and as soon as you plug in battery to when you give 5-volt to the board, it turns on, because that's the same thing as holding the power button while giving it power. But instead of doing this, get rid of this. If you bridge that pad that's in the diagram, which is this one, to one of the grounds, that does the same thing. It does the same thing as this. Okay? So if you want to get rid of one of the buttons on here, and you only want a record button and maybe an LED, then you can bridge that, and then you won't have to deal with a power button. However, if you want to be able to turn it on and off, or even change modes, you know, time-lapse mode, photo mode, or whatever, then you can keep that button. It's up to you. 2 buttons, 1 button, your choice. But if you look at that diagram, those are the pads you need for record and the power/mode button. So, and then there's a common ground. You only need 1 ground. So what I do is I use a 3-pin connector that I got from like Hobby King, and I just happen to have a bunch of those and it's an extension cable. So if you just cut it in the middle and then use both ends, you now have a male-female version of that cable. So it's a 3-pin cable, red, yellow, and ground. So the red I soldered to the record pad, and the yellow or tan color I soldered to the power/mode pad, and then ground is a common ground. So you're starting to think, well, there's only one ground wire now and you have 2 buttons. Well, what I do is once I put these buttons in the little button module on the other side, I'll just bridge the ground. So it'll be ground to motherboard ground, GoPro ground. Okay, so again, one button ground to the other button ground to the GoPro ground. And then on the other side of the buttons, I will have the power, the tan cable, and then on the other side of the other button, I'll have the red cable for record. And you'll see all that when I solder it up. Actually, just to prove a point, I am going to temporarily solder the mode, this is getting in my way, mode button pad to ground. Okay, I'm going to try to put a solder ball on these. I had to clean the conformal off with a little bit of acetone. Okay, there's a little solder ball. It's hard to do this when you're trying to keep it in camera. There's a little solder ball. Okay. 2 little solder balls. Alright, sweet. My hand is in the way. There we go. And then we're going to attach that. Okay, that's soldered. Alright, so now let's see what happens. Okay, so we got that power and mode button grounded. I'm going to hook up the display. This is just a test. And once we supply power, it should automatically turn on, which proves, and there you go. So this proves that that mode button, by grounding it, does in fact immediately turn on power, and you can skip that button if you only, you're not seeing anything because I got tape on over the lens to protect. So that works. Okay, so I'm going to undo this cable, and then I'm going to replace with this extension. This is an extension, but by cutting it somewhere in the middle, I'm going to have a pigtail off the GoPro, and then I'm going to have the female end on the buttons. You don't have to do this. I just do this so that I can remove the buttons if I want to. And let's say I update the design. You know how often I update these things. So I got these at Hobby King I can't remember when, but here is the part number. I'll leave that for a few seconds. You can pause the video and grab that. Okay, so that is what these are. And so I want this to be, so this has to be long enough for, the ground's the shortest, and then the tan cable is going to be here, and then the red cable is going to be here, and I want this sitting roughly here. And I need enough room to put my finger on it, so it needs to be about this long. Okay, so I've cut it, and I will strip the wires at the ends. I'm going to angle it like this because I want it to be tucked down into the case. Is that it? Oh, it's on there. Wow, that's flux is awesome. Okay, and then I'm going to turn this around. Oh, I didn't even remove these. I should remove this. A little bit of solder. Okay, So that one's on, and then the power/mode. It's gonna come in from the side here. Bend it a little. Very, very gentle tug test. Okay. I will probably coat those with conformal just to make sure they're not bare in case something comes back here and touches those. Okay, so that's my 3-pin connector. And then the opposite side, which is, what do I do with it? Here will be for the buttons. Alright, let's do that. I got my little 2 buttons, got my button holder, and then my pigtail. So I know that I want the pigtail to be roughly this long, and the longest cable is going to be the orange, the tan one is going to be my power button. So that's going to come all the way down here. I'll give it a little bit of slack and I'll cut it here. Ground is in the middle, and then red's going to be cut somewhere over here. But I'm going to leave a little bit of room for ground because I need to splice in another one so that the other wire can go to ground. So let's do it like this. Record, power, okay, and let's tin those 2 at least so they don't fray on me. I hate touching flux with my fingers. And of course I have cat hair everywhere. We'll just touch these for a moment, otherwise the PVC casing will melt. Ooh, that red one, it's already frayed a little bit. Okay, good. Alright, and then ground, what we need... Okay, so I'm going to take this one for now, and we'll just do this. 2 buttons, 2 ground wires, common ground. Okay, tinned. Alright, so this is the part where we're going to start shoving these through in here. So ground. Well, the record one's kind of short, isn't it? I may have miscalculated that a little bit. Okay, it's only a few millimeters, it's okay. So my personal preference is to have the record button on top. You can have it wherever you want. You can switch it, have it record on bottom. I'm just used to having it on the top, just like the ribbon cable was. Okay, there's the other one. Alright, those are the 2 grounds for your buttons. You know, I want to do it on the inside. Okay, well, I got it on the outside. That's okay. Let's see if we're going to clean that up a little bit. I don't want to add width to this button if I can help it. Okay. Doesn't take much. Okay, that's pretty good. Alright. 2 grounds. So now I'm going to do my record button. Try to keep the profile down. Okay. Record button. And let's see, we want to push this wire over a little bit because it has to be over here. Power button. Okay. That is that. Okay. So this is going to be pretty tight. So glue is optional. I probably will, what I'll do is I'll shove these in And then I'm going to trim this sharp piece of solder off. And then once I shove them in, I'll add a little super glue on the other side. I wonder if the ground wire is causing an issue. Probably denting the button a little. No, that'll work. Okay, so going to get another piece of zip tie. And I'm going to try to drizzle just a little bit of CA. This spot right there. Okay. Oops. And hold the button while that works. Okay. A little bit of kicker. And hold it down. Okay, so that's not moving. That one's good. This one's good. Okay. 2 buttons. Alright, so let's test the buttons. I've connected it with my pigtail. I've got the screen on so we know what's going on. And what's most important, okay, we've got power. Now we'll turn it on. Power's on. Records. Stops recording. Okay, that's what's most important. Just to be able to start and stop the recording. At this point, you can just unplug it because you have to stop the recording to save the file. But you don't have to gracefully shut it down with the button, so you can just unplug power at this point. Alright, awesome. Buttons work. Get my thumb out of the way. Maybe you could just scan the QR code. There's the part number. I'll put that part number down in the description. These are the connectors. And this parentheses just describes the manufacturer of the tape reel, 5351. That part really doesn't matter. I did get a 53 from digikey. For each one of these you want to make, get at least 4 of the connectors because you'll probably ruin a couple. Okay, so this next part is going to be pretty long because this is going to be very difficult. If you thought those buttons were hard, this next part is going to be probably the same amount of time. We'll see. But I don't even know where to begin. I am so filled with trepidation on just doing another one of these. I want to do one because I still have one more GoPro case I want to attach buttons to, so I'm going to do it. But after that, I don't ever want to see these connectors again. So here's the thing. Okay, I have a little diagram here. These are the pins, and so this is looking down here. Here's the so it's as if you're looking down on the connector like this. Alright? Not like this, like this. And you know, this is the right side of the GoPro, and the connection will go to the left. So looking at the diagram, the left side, the red oval is on this side. Focus. Left oval is on this side, the green oval is on the right side. Okay? Keep that in mind, because when you start messing with that connector, you have to remember to keep it straight. Otherwise, if you put the red one, count the number of pins wrong and put it on this side, you know, things aren't going to work. You may possibly be bridging something you're not supposed to as well. So just make sure that you look at the diagram and realize that the connector is facing down, and the pins are, you're looking down at the pins, not up. or not looking down at the connector, but you're looking down at the pins, okay? Very important. So look at the diagram. Alright. 5th from the left up is the anode. I made it red because that's like the higher voltage. And then the cathode is, I made it green. And it's not ground, it's the lower voltage. I am not an electrical engineer, so I can't tell you what the difference is between the terminology. So the anode goes 5 up from the left. The cathode goes 6 down from the right. Alright, now let's keep still looking at this diagram. The spacing between those pins is about the width between 2 lines of my fingerprint. Think about that. What wire do I even have that's that narrow? I ruined 4 of these because I tried soldering to one of the pins and I just bridged them. I just kept bridging pins. So I finally came up with a solution. It's still not easy, but this next diagram, the gray areas are the pins that I removed. So I took an X-Acto knife and I popped those pins off. And they're just held on the plastic, so you have to be careful. I popped those pins off, and that gave me room. So now there's a dead space before and after, pins on the left and the ones on the right, easier to solder to. Now, a word about this connector. It's very fragile. It's tiny. If you get this connector, take it out of the package and stick it right on the GoPro, you won't get it off without destroying it. Because when you try to pull it off by the pins, you're going to pull off one pin at a time. So then you have to shove it. I know this from experience, so don't do it. You have to shove an X-Acto knife into the edge and pry it off. And then you're just going to ruin it. So that's how I ruined one of them. The connector, has to be backed by something. You'll notice on the actual ribbon cable, it's got this big metal thing, right? And also, it can't be backed by something flexible. It has to be stiff like this, because when you flex it, you'll snap the plastic, and then you've ruined it again. So the backing has to be stiff. So I 3D printed a small, I can't remember, it's like a 5x9 plate out of PETG and super glue it. But no matter what you do, it's got to be something firm. Okay, so now that we've kind of got an idea about how difficult this is, I'm going to present a couple of options. And I think they might be easier because this is not easy at all. And like I said, I'm not even looking forward to doing this. So, option number 1. This ribbon cable will go bad. Focus. But the LED seems to be pretty solid, right? So, cut the button off. Don't do the grounding trick. Just cut it off. And use this ribbon cable purely as an LED. And then this little LED will light up when you use the buttons. It'll work. I've done it. I didn't want this anymore, so I wanted to get rid of it. So, but if you don't want to do these crazy pins, then you can use the LED or the ribbon cable as an LED. The other option is to remove that front display. Now, I know that's actually really difficult to do. So, that is probably slightly easier than doing this pin. It just takes a bit of patience. Remove that front display, put it on there, and that way you'll have an indication that you're recording. And it's great because you'll even know that you're in movie mode, etc., etc. You'll know that you're recording. It's a status indicator of recording. The LED might be a little bit better because, a flashing light you can see from farther away versus having to get up close to see an LCD screen that's not backlit. So that's another choice. And you can even buy that. You don't have to take it out of your case. You can actually purchase it for like $16 or something from AliExpress. So that's probably a simple solution. But then you're going to have to accommodate for that in the case. You have to be careful not to crash into it. It's also going to be covering up what probably gets the hottest is this thing. So you have to worry a little bit about heat maybe? I'm not sure. I haven't used it. So those are your 3 options. You do the LED thing. Use the ribbon cable as LED, or buy or take out the front screen. There's actually a 4th option, which it's not a good option, but it would work. Use the buttons, don't have any kind of LED, count how many seconds it takes to hold down the power button to get power, count how many seconds you have to wait, and then count how many seconds you have to push down the record button to record. it'll probably work. And then touch this front and it'll be really hot. You'll actually know it's recording. You could do it like that. But that's not a guarantee. So having an indicator is actually the best way to do it. Like an idiot, I chose the LED, so that's what I'll be doing. And oh boy, okay, let's get started on that. Quick word about LEDs. So I just happen to have these. I bought these years ago on eBay, I think, for some ultra micro Horizon Hobby, whatever, bind and fly planes that I want to put on there, or even like a little MCPX helicopter, whatever. I just happen to have these. So these LEDs are like 1.9 and 2.3 volts. This one, if you put this on this 3-cell battery, even if you just use one of the cells, it will blow. I blew one. This one can take up to 3.6 volts, so I can put it in here and show you how this works. So the shorter leg is the cathode, the longer leg is the anode. In other words, the longer leg will get the higher voltage. So I'll spread these out just a little bit. So going by, starting with ground, if I put this, so it lights up, right? Alright, that's the white one. I have one red one left I'm going to use. So now, here's the thing. So, if I just move things over, by the way, I don't know if you guys know how these balance taps work. It's ground, cell 1 is 4.2, cell 2 is 8.4, cell 3 is 12.6, assuming fully charged at 4.2 volts per cell. So it's 0, 4.2, 8.4, 12.6, right? So if I move this over, the voltage difference is the same. So, even though I'm not using ground, I'm using the two cells, the voltage still lights up because the voltage difference is what makes it work, right? And that's probably really true of just about anything electronic difference. But so there you go. So if you just, but now if I bridge these from the last one to the first one, it'll pop, it'll blow. So I'm not gonna do that. So that's how that's gonna work. Here's the red one. I'm gonna cut these legs really short. I am gonna, when you cut these, make sure you cut one slightly longer than the other, so that you know that which one's the anode, which one's the cathode. So, all right. Okay, so here's the connector, and yeah, the pins are facing up. The socket is facing down. And like I showed on the diagram, on the left side, I'm gonna count 5 up and try to solder to that. On the right side, I'm going to count 6 down and try to solder to that. But before I do that, to make it easier, I'm going to remove the pins below and above and below both of those. And just to give you an idea of what we're looking at here, that's my finger. See the lines on my fingerprints? That's an X-Acto knife. So, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and try to remove I'm going to try to remove the pins that are adjacent to make soldering easier. I'm not going to do it on camera because this camera is actually in my way. So I need to bend my head down close to this thing to do this. So hopefully we'll come back and have it when it's all done in maybe a day and a half. Alright. Okay. I was able to do it. I did ruin one though. Here's the one I ruined. Yeah. So I use a piece of electrical tape to hold it down while I try to pry these little things off. You can see some bits and pieces. So if you count on the right side, I removed the 5th and 7th one, leaving the 6th. And the left side, starting from the bottom, I removed the 4th and the 6th one, leaving the 5th pin. So you need the 5th pin on the left and the 6th pin on the right. From the 6th from the top, 5th from the bottom. So I'm going to solder a red wire here and some other non-red wire, black or blue or whatever here. This will be the anode, this will be the cathode. And unfortunately, that's the only way to get this LED working. There's nothing on the back of the board that I could find that would make the LED light. So, that's the next step. And here's the socket with the wire soldered on. So the only way I was able to do it, remember these wires are like 30 or 36 gauge. The only way I was able to do it was by removing those adjacent pins. and you're still probably going to destroy one or two. It might help to heat up the adjacent pins first with the soldering iron a little bit. That way it makes them soft and easy to pry off. So that's that's the connector. And then this next image is with a piece of 3D print super glued to the pin side, not the socket side, obviously. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to get it on. So on the pin side, I super glued this PETG, well, I don't know, a few millimeters by a few millimeters. Measure the original one and print something the same, and then not even, I made mine 1 millimeter thick. It's too thick. Not even 1 millimeter thick, like 0.6 or 0.8 is probably a good idea. And then I just glued it on there, and then that will act as my connector. And you'll see though that it's not as good as the original, but I have a way on my case to hold it in place. But okay, so this is ready to hook up to the LED. Okay, I've got this started up. I want to do a quick continuity test, make sure I'm not bridging something I shouldn't be. I'm just going to run this along. It should only beep once when I hit the right pin. Oh man, it's hard to hold this down. Okay, that side's good. Let's get the other one. Okay, that's good. So only on those the one pin on each side. I think we're good to go. I've made this little connector, and I didn't fully put it in my button case yet because I want to test it. Always test everything first before you seal it all up, and then because if it doesn't work, you're kind of starting over. Okay, so once you add this printed backing plate, it's not exactly, it adds some depth, so it's not like it clips in and wants to stay there. So yeah, this is all a little bit kludgy, but I have a tab on my design, on my print, focus, that will hold it in there. So I'm going to slide this case in just a little bit, enough to hold that in there so I can test it. Just want to test this LED to see if it powers on. Okay, so that's being held in there. You can see the red being held in by the blue. Alright. Keep the wires on the LED away, far apart. I'm going to spread them out a little bit. Okay, the battery. Let's see what happens. First time plugging in. There it goes. I saw a flash. Yay! Alright, I don't know if you saw that on camera, but I'm putting the LED now. Power. Record. Oh wait, you always have to give it a second after power. Record. There we go. Stop record. And you can unplug it at this point, but let's try power. Okay. Great. So now I can button it all up in the button case. Alright, so we tested the LED. We know it works. I'm going to undo this soldering, cut this short, and make sure everything fits in here. And all the wires have to come out the top. I left a short gap. When it slides on, there's a piece of plastic that comes up like this, and you have about this much of a gap. So the wires have to go through and have to be able to come out there. But with this like 30 gauge wire or whatever, it should be fine. Besides, this is the second one I've done. So I want to mention, actually, hold on. I want to mention that I considered soldering the LED wires directly to the appropriate legs of these pins. And I even tried it. I couldn't get it to stick, and I didn't have conformal coating on it or anything, but I just couldn't get it to stick. I didn't try too hard because if you damage this, remember this is plastic. If you damage this, you're done. There's no way to fix this one. And this one's kind of important because, this one for the USB-C, it's no big deal. You damage it, I've got this workaround. But you damage this, and you can't use your display anymore. And I don't want to be stuck in that boat. So even though that might be a better solution than this one is not as risky or permanent as damaging this. So That's why I went with this one. Alright, so let's continue. And you know what? So here's what I'm gonna do off camera because it's still in my way. I'm gonna undo this, I'm gonna clip this, and then I'm gonna snake these through here. And then, yeah, so we'll do that. Okay, so I cut this, and as you can tell, I cut one longer than the other. There actually is a way to look inside the bulb of the LED and tell which one's the anode and cathode. So you could cut them the same length, but it's just so much easier to cut one just, you know, half a millimeter to 1 millimeter longer. And that way it's a really easy visual way to know. So I've snaked these through. Before I solder, I want to make sure that I have enough slack, because this will slide up and down. So I just need about this much, which means I want to cut these right about here. So I'm going to pull these out a few millimeters. I'm going to cut these here. I don't want too much slack. Like right about here. And we'll solder this up to this LED. That should do it. This one on, good? Yeah. Alright, and then we'll snake it through. Don't pull on this, you want to pull on the wires only. And there it goes. You know what? I'm going to push it back through, and then we'll add a little bit of super glue. A little bit of CA. I just use this stuff like an eyedropper. Well, it's a lot. Okay, that should have set by now. And it's not going anywhere. Alright, I'm gonna put a little conformal coat on that as well. I'm gonna try not to get it on the plastic, otherwise it'll act like glue. Okay, that should do it. And as I said before, I'm going to coat the spots that I soldered here. Okay, should be good. Safe. This is basically it. It's ready to assemble. Now I'm holding this on because, like I said, it'll pop off, but by sliding it into the case, this tab here will keep it in. So basically ready to assemble, and then once it's in there, I should never have to remove it unless something breaks. And then I would just move this from quad to quad, from whoop to whoop. Okay, let's get this in here. And while squeezing down on it, that pushes on there. Alright, that's in, and now I just have to tuck these wires. Okay, I'm just gonna shove these wires in a little bit so that they're not exposed. Alright, here it is. Moment of truth. Recording, yay. Stop recording. Power off. Alright, I think we're good. Okay. Do not ask me to do this. I will show you how to do it. I am not going to do it again. Alright. And that's it. Well, good luck, guys. Have fun, or not. But good luck. Alright, you'll need it.